A beautiful Wednesday after the break week. We had a nice half a semester to start the summer. We do have a good half of the semester remaining. We're going to have lots of fun in the next, weeks coming forward. I would like to, first give you guys all a good welcome back. Hope you had a good week to even digress or decompress and maybe take a break as well. Sometimes the pressure can mount up, and whether it's work or school, things do sometimes end up in the way. So I hope you guys had a good way to also relax too. And going forward, I think it's a pretty smooth transition from the past. I've seen a lot of, these students, when they do their portfolios, you get that sense of gratitude when you finish school. So you're going to have the same gratitude when you do finish this semester and this term. So it's going to be a good way to finish the summer for all of you. I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to get started with my monitor here. This will be a two-part lesson. The first part, I'm going to go over the finalizing the UX planes. Today's going to be the surface plane, and that'll wrap up the entire UX segment for the course. Now we're going to focus more on UI, which that's what the course is, UX, UI, and we're going to do a lot of in the Figma application with interactive stuff as well. So XD, we're going to just talk about it a little bit. I have a few items I wanted to show you in XD, but that might help you with the current project, which is due next week, by the way. So I'd also want to take the time this evening to go around and help some of you if you have any questions and stuff, and to see how everyone's doing. Check your progress. And don't feel bad if you haven't really got anything to show me. Just, I'm assuming you're at least in the starting phase or something, okay? But don't wait till last minute because you have 1 week left, okay? So this is what I'm here for. I want to help you. So let me quickly see where we are here. I'm going to go back to the course module here. All right, so we have 3 items are down, okay? So you should have all your grades done. Oh, these one haven't been posted. Now they're posted. It was glitching on me the other day, so I posted it there. So you do have your last ones. I just posted them. The UI kit. That means the 3 items are done. You do have 3 items left. The 3 items remaining are the bigger items. One is an assignment, like a smaller assignment. It's going to be a UI kit for a desktop portfolio website. So that's when you got to create an interactive UI kit. It's kind of fun because there's more interaction with websites than apps in terms of rollovers, hover states, things like that. Whereas the apps and the clickable items are more click, drag, and tap and stuff. Okay, so it's a little different. It's a visual interactive difference. I wanted to make sure you understand. So that's going to be the other interactive UI kit. It's going to be done in Figma. Okay, so we're going to do a Figma assignment going forward. This game assignment is the XD one. So you have 1 XD and 2 Figma assignments coming up. Okay, the XD is due next week. Like I said, I'll go over that quickly again for you in case you need some help. And we're going to segue into the Figma parts tonight as well. And then we're going to talk about the mobile app group project. Actually, we'll talk about it probably next week because next week we'll wrap up the other one, okay? And I still have to assign the groups for the final project for this semester. All right, so yeah, 3 down, 3 to go. That's how the items are here. I hope you're, I think all the lessons are up to date. Just to quickly give you a breakdown, there's the YouTube channel should be up and running. I do check it from time to time. So if you go down here, you do have like last week, there's the 2 parts right here. So make sure if you did miss any lessons, you can watch the video tutorials. I'm going to keep populating these tutorials and you're going to have access to them. All right, and now we're wrapping up the wireframing process because that entails you guys creating an interactive type of component, which is in this case the what's the exact name that I gave? I just want to make sure here. The interactive game assignment. Okay, so that one I just gave you a theme where you guys can pick any. I used Curious Cosmos as an example. All right, so we did a full out example last time we were here, I believe, right? We did the whole thing from scratch. I used images. I went to the internet even. I used the backgrounds. I hope they gave you enough exposure to using the application. XD is a very simple program. It does have some very, very cool features. Where if you compare Figma and XD, I kind of like XD a lot more when it comes to some of the ease of use functionality because it's an Adobe software. Whereas Figma is a different software altogether. It's a great tool, but it's just a little different. It's something to get used to. So that's something that we're going to transition into as we go forward. So, like I said, we're going to finish this up here. And next week this is due. So if you have any questions, let me know. I did ask the question earlier if you have tablets. I'd love to test this on an actual tablet. Okay, so that's going to be the whole point. You go through these interactive kiosks and stuff. They do have a lot of things in tablets that you can do stuff with. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to test it on a tablet. All right, so here's where we left off last week, just with the XD file here. Another good thing I like about XD is the fact that you can share it on a desktop browser. You can actually embed it in an iframe source tag, which will kind of make it look like a real interactive desktop website. Whereas the Figma way of sharing it, it's embedded differently. It's not really the same experience. Just again, the pros and cons into the two. And if you see here, this is how we created the assignment or the exercise, I should say. I want to see some animations, some content, very basic stuff here. This is nothing fancy here. We kept it simple. We made 3 sections. And of course, this is just to get you started. I do expect to see more from you and a better result, obviously. This took me like an hour and a half, maybe less. Okay. And just by using the basic tools in XD, you're able to create this fun, interactive learning experience for all ages. Okay. And we utilize 7 different artboards. The main interface design comes from the main screen, which is this one here. So make sure you present your case with a nice solid title, some kind of a subheading, some instructions, some nice icons and graphics, something visual that you can captivate the audience with, okay, of all ages. And of course, that followed by some animations and stuff, okay? So I did cover all the tools in XD, some of the document assets we did. Of course, we covered the properties. We did prototyping, okay? So we kind of did good 3 solid XD classes. I gave you enough classes in XD. What I didn't cover, however, is the components part. So that's something I wanted to quickly just go over with you this evening. So this way we leave no stone unturned, okay? So I'm going to do a quick rollover with this button that we left unscathed here. We'll do something with that one just to show you some other things you can maybe add if you already finished or you're well into the your journey into getting this thing almost wrapped up. Okay. So basically, just like any other button, you go to prototype and you can link anything to any artboard, just like this, dragging and dropping the property. Even an image could be an interactive element. So images, elements, objects, buttons, anything basically could be a button. This title right here, this title could be a button too. I can just make that handle, link it to this page. When people click on the title, it'll go to that page. So it's very, very intuitive, okay? Basically, you can do whatever you want. Look, you can link this, this, this. We did connect these, obviously, right? Remember, these go to different sections, right? And we did do the auto animate. So watch the video last 2 weeks ago. I don't want to be repetitive and go over this again, but I do want to cover some things that we kind of left out because we had no time. So I wanted to show you some more interactive stuff you can do, okay? So for one, for example, let's look at this fun fact button. I'm going to click on it here. Go back to the design here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to make it a component. So creating components is a more advanced method of using interaction with XD and Figma. So what I'm communicating here with you is that what we're learning here, when I show you Figma, it's exactly the same terminology. The application is different, but the way it works is very similar. It gives you more interactive states. Okay, so if I make this a component now, you see here, there's something called here a default states. A default state is something that you see from the origin or the get-go, and it looks exactly the way from the very beginning, okay? Notice also with the components, so again, Command K, same shortcut. K, components is spelled with a C, but the shortcut is Command K. Why did they use Command C for a shortcut? That's like a 6 o'clock question, eh? Because it's for copy, of course. They can't use every shortcut. Copy and paste are the first shortcuts that came up like 30 years ago. Even print, Command P for print, not Command V is paste. Because print was very important for people in the office to print documents. So a lot of these fundamental shortcuts are already used up. So what you're left with is these leftover shortcuts. And some of them are different than other programs, like the option control and stuff like that. So again, creating components is basically pressing Command or Control K on a PC. When you do that, notice how the bounding box on this item becomes green, highlighted. Okay, but because if I click on something else, it's highlighted in blue. So the blue bounding box and the green bounding box is the visual distinction between the two things. One is being a component, and the other is being a normal object or item. Okay? So again, I can click on this and make this a component as well. Right-click, make component. Okay? And that's basically how is you're making components. All right. Now, because I made this a component, if you look closely here, these other items don't have any see component is grayed out. Okay. If you can make it a component here too, that's another way to do it. Press the plus button. You can convert anything into a component from the actual from the properties menu or panel, I should say. But because this is a component already, what you see is the component being already inserted, and now you have what's called a default state. This is where we control the interaction. Now, I'm really being careful here. I explain this because in Figma, it's a little different. First of all, we assign it from the top here somewhere, and the states are all built within themselves. So you no longer have to go here to do this. So I want you to understand the difference. So you don't confuse the two, because you might get confused. Now that you see it's a component clearly, and trust me, if you don't do components for this assignment, I'm not going to use it against you. But for those of you that want to challenge yourselves and do some extra rollovers and stuff, sure, by all means. Now, keep in mind, rollovers are good for websites. Tablets, cell phones, like smartphones, don't have rollovers. They got taps, clicks, right? Drags, that kind of stuff. But just for the sake of doing it, you can check it out. So now that we have a default state, I'm going to go to the right here and press this plus button. This plus button, what's called it, adds a state. And you can add a new state, a hover state, or a toggle state. There's only 3 different states. A new state could be basically a state that you can assign of any type of interaction you can choose from, but most people go with the defaults, which I would suggest you do. So let's do, for example, a toggle state, okay? And a toggle state means you can do like a click, whereas a hover state, you do like a hover. So you know what? I think since, let's do hover first, because it's the first one on the list here. So here's the hover state. So keep in mind, when you have this selected, this is when the tedious part comes in. Hover state, default state, hover state, default state. So what can happen in the hover state is I'm going to drag this and kind of give it a quick little rotation here like that. Okay. Actually, I'm going to make it a little. Right. I'm going to make it smaller. Actually, I'm going to make it bigger. Make it bigger here. So I'm increasing the size. And on the default state, I'm going to reduce the size. Hover state, default state, hover state, default state. Okay. You can do more interactive stuff with colors, objects, animations. I'll show you how those work after. But to be honest with you, I kind of broke a few rules doing this. A lot of people do hover states on like buttons, graphics. I use the natural image. So I took a little chance. It should still work, but it's very limited in that sense, if you know what I'm saying. So it kind of let me do, because I can't change the color of this. It's an image, right? This is pixels. If this was like an object, I can change colors. I can do more things like hover states, right? With images, you're kind of limited to, I can go to Photoshop and copy and paste two states and bring it in and do all that kind of nonsense, but it's going to waste a lot of time, and I'm sure you get the point, right? So let's just go with these basic things. What I want you to make sure is when you do this basic hover state or default state, always leave it on the hover state. So don't leave it on the default state by accident. The hover state, I should say. Always go to the default state. Now, something small like this, if you press the play button now, you do have this. You see how it kind of animates this action, right? So this only works on like websites and other interactive elements with the mouse cursor. You tapping this on a tablet won't work. So kind of use your own discretion. If you're doing a website prototype, great. If you're doing like a tablet or mobile prototype, maybe not so much, right? So that's how that works, okay? Since we're on the subject of this, let me just do one more. I'm going to cover the other one, and then we're going to wrap up this XD segment. We're going to do like a switch button, okay? The switch buttons are very fun and easy to work with. I'm going to make a switch button right over here. And I can share this with you after I'm done. I can upload it on today's lesson so you can see exactly what I did here. I'll create a new button. It's a good little review for you. Okay. So again, we're going to create a button using the rectangle tool here. I'll keep it outside the artboard so you can clearly see. So here's a simple button. I'm going to round the corners a bit. Okay, like this. I'm going to use two elements, a circle, right? A circle and a rectangle. So it's like a little switch button. I'm going to make this clickable. So when you click it, it switches on. When you click it again, it switches off. It's a very simple little switch. And that can be another interactive tool or element you can include in your presentation. Let's add some color. So this will be a nice green. I'm using the fill property on the far right here, just by changing different color attributes. This would be maybe like a, right? And I'm going to change the border to white. So if I put on this black background, it'll be clearly visible. Okay, so I'm going to make it nice and smaller, like that. Right? And this can switch a property or some kind of an event that may occur on our interactive showcase, okay? So here I have two objects. I have a circle, right? And I have a rectangle, and I align them perfectly inside of one another. I can even use Shift Select, go to the Align palette here, and simply do Align Middle. I can do Far Left, Center, and that kind of stuff. But I'll purposely want to move it to the left slightly, so it'll be like a switch icon. Okay. So now because I have two objects, here's what you do. And this again, same rules apply in Figma. Okay. So if I select this circle and I'm holding Shift and I select this rounded rectangle, I have two objects selected. I'm going to right click. Okay. And I'm going to make a component. So the first example, I use an image, like an image graphic or an icon or anything to make a component. Now I'm using two objects to make a component. It's like grouping something. Components like grouping, but in a more elaborate way, like a more interactive way to use grouped objects for. That's the intent, okay? So if I do make a component now, I do have the default state highlighted on the far right corner here. This is our default state. Notice how it has this green little rectangle as well, okay? By the way, another thing is when you make components, they become part of your library. That means if I delete this, look what happens. If I delete it, I can always bring it back from here. It's like making a symbol in Illustrator. It always has a storage space built within the file. So I'm going to drag the component again and have another component right here. Look, I can drag another one and another one. I can drag this one too, right? You can drag as many components as you want. So it's like they're stored items, right? But what I'm going to do now is create something with this component. And because I want you to notice something else, the green bounding box, but the hollow diamond, it's white. It's not solid green. What does that mean? That means it's not the master component. Master component means you can edit the master, like a master page in InDesign. It all affects all the pages. But if you change this, it won't affect the original one. Does that make sense? I mean, honestly, it's not really a big deal. You can always change one or the other. But I like to keep it separate just for the sake of keeping it original. In case something does go wrong, you still have the original one back there. So let's see how this can work now. So I have a little switch here on the side. We have a little fun fact button here, a little interactive thing here. And again, our attention is when you make a component on this right property tab on the right. So we have a default state. It's always a default state. That's a normal state, right? Default state is what you see. Now, okay. Now, because this is a button, okay, you can't really add a state from the design view. You have to take it a step further and go to prototype view. Get it? So now that we're in prototype view, then we get to click on this little anchor like that, okay? And then we create a trigger, okay? So we can create a trigger like tap or drag or something else, right? But let me just back it up 1 second here with, should have been a, there we go. Let me do that one after. I'll keep it simple for now, okay? When you have the copy, because I was doing a lot of dragging and dropping, when you do this, you can't really do interactive stuff with these here. You have to do what's called the master. That's why I was pointing the master out. So let me actually show you the main difference again. What's the difference? This one and that one. We can't see it now. This is the master. Gotta slow down. It won't do it fast. This has the solid green diamond, right? This has a white hollow diamond. So that's how you can differentiate the master. Another way it tells you is if you select it, it tells you component 2, 3. This is just component 2, okay? The master component is the one that you can add interactive states to. So make sure you don't do a lot of what I was doing. I was just kind of showing you this and that. If you do it like thoroughly and slowly, you should get the component. Once you make it, right away, fix your focus on this part here and create a new state. So again, I'm in the design phase, not prototype. I'll do prototype after. So we're in design. We click on this little plus button. And this adds a new state. I already showed you what hover state does, right? We made the graphic icon bigger and smaller, right? Now I'm going to do what's called a toggle state. Toggle means on and off, like a switch. A lot of these switches are popular UI kit elements. So toggle state is implemented here. Before we taught Figma, because I started Figma last semester, a lot of the students did the second UI kit assignment was all interactive buttons in XD, okay? Because we're not doing this in XD, I'll have you do this in Figma. You understand? So all the stuff I'm teaching you now, you're going to remember in Figma. It's just a different way of applying it, but the methodology is the same. So toggle state. What does toggle state mean? Well, it means that if you click on something, it'll toggle to that particular state. Well, what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to go right here. I'm going to double click to access the components or the elements in the component, and I'm going to move this circle on this side. So watch this now. And then deselect, reselect. So my default state is here. My toggle state is here. So I just created a default state and a toggle state. Okay. I can do more stuff, change the color, do different things, right? Let's actually do the color too. So the toggle state again, I'm going to change the color to maybe yellow, orange. There we go. Okay. So I change the color to orange as well. So it's like a switch, right? And always, always leave it on the default state. So now, what that means is if we press the play button, we have this interactive thing. I mean, yeah, we have this stuff here, right? But only on the main screen, we have what's called an animated hover rollover. Okay. And that can also be interactive. You click, it'll go somewhere. You just have to point it to the right page. And we have this switch button that goes on and off, on and off. So that can also be interactive. Like light mode, dark mode, right? You can change different screens and stuff. It's a little harder to do because you have to get a whole screen pointed to that state, right? But anyhow, that's the whole interaction stuff with these components. Another thing I wanted to point out to you guys is this, the timing. Because if I go to prototype, right, I want to show you the mechanics behind the action. So what really, you're like, why did it move? Why did it change color? Well, because look, the trigger is tapped. That was the trigger, okay? And the action was auto animate. So it animates automatically the circle moving. And then the destination was a toggle state. So this shows you the breakdown of what happened, right? So you can control this at any angle you want. So you can say, listen, I don't want to do this. I want to make it I want to do a drag. I want to do a hover. See, you can change the state to something else. It doesn't have to be tap. It could be drag, hover, right? Different states. This is where you have to kind of be more into the interactive side. So I'm going to leave it a tap for now, right? Now the delay, the 0.3 seconds, I'm going to make it 0 seconds. Okay, just to keep it nice and simple. And same as this one, 0 seconds. Notice how much more faster this will work now. Hope it's not too fast. Oh, it's a little too fast. There's no time to animate because it took out the seconds, right? I'm going to make it maybe 0.5 seconds. And the default state will be also 0.5 seconds. There we go, 0.5 seconds. Other things you can do. Let's change the background color of this as well. Back to design view. I can even change this to something else. Red, right? Just to show you how immersive this could get. So colors and animations work together. Let's press play again. Look at this. Even the colors change, see? And when you're done, here's the good thing about these. You can delete it and you can bring in as many as you want after, and you can copy and paste and have as many as you like, like switches and stuff. So I have 3 right now on the side. If I press the play button, I can do individually one at a time. It's like a puzzle or whatever, lock or something like that. So you can have as many multiple components as you like interacting with your presentation. So it's very easy to implement these things. And I've seen some more conservative kind of use of this stuff with icons and sliders and volume bars and stuff. This is just a simple example, but I wanted to explain to you how XD, it's not just that simple. I don't want you to think XD doesn't have, because you're going to say, oh, Figma's way better. It's got components and stuff. So does XD. Okay. XD has everything Figma has. Figma has a few more things with artboards and stuff with the frames. It's a little more community based. That's why XD is no longer, continued. But it did have a lot of stuff, and it's still a formidable application. Okay, any questions? No? All right, so that wraps up the whole XD overall kind of review, quick startup thing I wanted to do today. Huh? This is for XD, but I'll show you this in Figma as well, okay? With Figma, we can do more interactive stuff. But in case, because this is due next week, your assignment, and you want to add some more things, you can watch this video that I'm recording now and implement some more interactive stuff. If you have any questions, I can help you with that as well. And lastly, if you do save the project, simply do a save. Well, it saves anyways. What I really like about, again, stress about the XD part is the share component. Okay, you can basically do you can do what's called the I guess we'll do the design review default link. Right? Yeah, so when you're done with this project, pretend this is the one, right? Here's what I'd like you to do, actually. So I'd like you to go save local document. I want you to learn both, because you're going to share these files with agencies, professionals, teammates, right? Save as a local document, because I want to look at your file. I want to see that you did it. You didn't go copy some link on the internet and just throw it at me, right? So I can see what you did, right? So you're going to copy this, the Curious Cosmos. Let's call it Finale. Okay, Finale. Okay, so we're going to save that to the desktop. Okay. Okay, so I just saved it locally. So what I did here, ladies and gentlemen, is I saved this as a file. This file is only 9 megabytes. Not that big, okay? And I want you to give me this. Please put your name on these files. So you got to make sure your name is on the file, so I know it's your file. Some people put the N number and stuff. That's fine too. So this is what I want. If I go back here again, and you go to submit the assignments, drag the file. Also, the description. Tell me what you did. Just give me a quick description. Hey, I did an app, a game for kids to introduce them to doing basic math from 1 to 5, this and that. And just tell me a little bit about it. And you can also give me a link. In case your file is corrupt, I can also click on your link and look at it that way as well. So let me produce the link now as well to show you the two ways of sharing your work here. Local file, you should not give it to anybody but your teammates. Like us, we're a community, we can share it together, right? But if it's like, somebody that you're working for, unless they pay you for the job, don't give them your work file. The same way you won't give somebody your Photoshop file, right? Make sure they pay up. All they get is a low-res JPEG. You know what I mean? with watermark on top of it, right? That's what they get. They don't get layers and stuff. They don't get your Illustrator EPS file. No vector, nothing. Okay, so be careful, right? You got to protect yourself. Yeah, that's a fine. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, but not now though, because I'm in the middle of it. Yeah. So basically, so that was that. Let me now show you one more thing, everyone. So if you create the link, okay, you can also copy and paste this link here. There's the link, okay? So you can just copy it, copy the link, okay? And go back to Blackboard. So when you submit the file, paste the link too, okay? Make sense? Sure. So if you go here, if you click on this link, right? Well, that'll open the actual file, right? It'll open the XD file here on the browser, which I can do too to test it. But for you to copy it properly, you go here. There's a little button here. Looks like a link. You click on that. It says link copied. You see it says link copied. If you do that, and then you go to Blackboard and you paste it, and you just paste, look, you can just paste the link. See? Same thing, right? So please do both. Paste the link for your file and give me the local file. This way I know you did it properly, and I'll give you marks for the criteria that way, please. Okay? And if you forgot the link, I'll give you a second. You both? Perfect. Okay. One last thing. Let me show you the benefit of doing this. It's not just why you're doing it, but how good this is. And this is again why I kind of like XD. I wish you never know. The future is you know what Adobe offered Figma? Guess how much money they gave these guys? Well, guess what the offer was to buy Figma for Adobe? Take a guess. It's in the millions, billions. How much? $20 billion. $20 billion. And they said no. So Figma is a pretty strong entity. To say no to 20 billion, maybe million, I could understand, but $1 billion, 20 billion is not no small change, right? So they still held on. There was some kind of politics or something going on, but that's why the deal didn't go through, right? Well, anyhow, I still like Adobe's approach on how to share this. Let me show you that one last thing, and we'll wrap it up here. So this is a little. It looks like it's called copy embed code. Watch this. Copy embed code, right? You copy the code. You open up your HTML. What programs do you guys use? The C visuals. What do you guys use? The C, the VS Code, right? I got Dreamweaver here, right? Very quickly, I use Dreamweaver. Okay, instead of VS Code, just to quickly show you how kind of like easy it is to put this thing together in a website, right? So you can have a whole interactive website prototype from XD. This is suitable because we're not doing an app, we're doing a tablet slash, game kind of interactive thing, which will be adequate for like a desktop environment as well. I'm in Dreamweaver now. I don't know if you guys used Dreamweaver before. If you haven't, don't worry. It's something you can learn always. Create a new document in Dreamweaver. You can make HTML, CSS, all these other languages, JSON, XML, right? I'm going to go with simple HTML tag. Just hit the create button, and there's my HTML tag. I love Dreamweaver because you have my HTML code here. Let me make it a little bigger, right? And I got my design board here. So what you see is what you get right off the bat without you testing it in the browser, right? So the fact that I copied that code from XD, I'm going to go here in the body tag, right? Just right here, just when the tag is here. I'm going to hit Command V. I'm going to paste what's called an iframe source. The same way you can paste an iframe source for Google Maps or YouTube videos. You can paste iframe sources in your HTML and play videos on your website. Very simple. Same way you play XD on your website doing this. The only thing I might want to do is also maybe center it, change the color, make it more appealing, and then launch it on a website and have a prototype ready to show the world. Okay, just from XD, done. Just by doing this. You don't have to even use Dreamweaver. I just did it just to be fancy because it's faster and easier to see it. But all you have to do is do that, and then it populates right away, right? Let me do one more thing. I'll put body, BG, color, and I'll pick the color picker. I'll go with a black background. Okay, so it's going to be 0000. Okay, I'm also going to put a center tag. And when I say a center tag, I mean a proper, watch this. I'm going to do like center, like old school center tag. And I'm going to copy this one that closes and put it right after the iframe. Okay. Basically, I open the center, I close the center tag right here. Okay. Right. So basically, I centered my entire iframe presentation from XD onto an HTML file. I can call this index HTML, upload on a server, and have it running. Let me quickly do a save. I'll do a save as right now. And I'll call this index.html on the desktop, save. Okay. Go buy a domain name from GoDaddy, call it cosmos.ca, upload this file, there's your website. Okay. That's how fast a prototype, I mean. Not a website. This won't be responsive and stuff. It's only meant to look like good on the desktop. That's the only drawback. It's not a responsive element. Okay, you ready? So I'm just going to hit return. Whoops. Return. Maybe just do one return. There. Just one return. Two returns maybe. Okay. Command S. I'm going to go do a real-time preview in Firefox or Google Chrome. There it is. Look at that. This is what I like about the iframe that XD generates. So now I have a whole thing that looks like an actual, a real website, centered, black background, which matches my stage, and I have a total interactive thing on the web right now, right? The thing has to load a bit. It's the link that I have from XD. Enable all. Anyways, it should work. It's just the thing is loading probably the link. Oh, there it is. See, it works. Just had to load because it is like a 8 MB file, so I have to process it. Once it uploads, it's a fully fledged, like an interactive thing on the web, right? And all I have is like an IP address with an index file. So that's why I really like how you can kind of use XD for quick interactive presentations and stuff. And all you have to do is copy and paste the code. You don't have to know even any HTML, very simple stuff. Save it, upload it. So if you want to go the extra mile and do this, right? Have some fun, do it, okay? Put it on an HTML file and you can show me also what it looks like on the browser. It's kind of cool to present it on a proper way. And you can share this with the whole world, not just me, because then everyone has an internet browser and has internet connection and can see your stuff. People don't need to have XD to look at your project. This is how you share it to the rest of the world, right? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna do a quick save again and quit Dreamweaver. Normally I play the song Dreamweaver, but I'm not gonna do it this evening. You guys know the song Dreamweaver? No? Okay, I won't play it. It's by Gary Wright. All right, so let's go back here for a second with the content for today was oops, this one here. Don't worry about the app example. That's something we're going to look at for the next project. Surface design UI. This is the one I'm going to quickly go over now. I'm going to save this. And then after this, we're going to go for a break. When we come back, we'll do the Figma. We'll start with Figma today as well, okay? Go to the desktop, save. And there's the HTML file. Okay, so I'm going to open up the PDF and go from there. Make sure my recording is set. All right, so this is the last plane for the UX UI course by Jesse James Garrett. Okay, as you know, we covered all the other 5 earlier. We started at the very beginning with the strategy, how important strategy is to building apps, websites, any type of interactive projects. You got to have a strategy. Then the scope, okay? You measure the end result, the beginning result, how much work does it take, the team, the building blocks, everything that needs to be put together to get this project going. Then the structure falls in place as well, how well structured all the pieces will be, and how you're going to build this thing from different things like wireframes, different types of budgets and plans and stuff. Then you have the skeleton, okay, and that's more like the prototyping, the wireframing, and all the other UI kits and things like that that you did to supplement these assignments. And the last one now is called the surface. The surface is all the fancy, nice, beautiful graphics that you've been creating for the past several months now, if not more, since your first semester. This is where graphic designers love to come in because they get to design the fonts, the colors, the styles, the images, all the nice stuff. Before that, you're not concerned about that. It all comes down to budget, money, team building, propositions, planning, things like that. Now comes the fun stuff. So now when you guys get to learn all this stuff, you get to understand how this is done in phases. You can't just build a website, just make it look pretty, and here you go, right? You have to implement all these steps that you're learning, okay? So visible language, basically, that's what the surface represents. All right. So visible language indicates context and conveys information. Things like layout, formats, proportions, grids, and organization. Typography, as you know, you had two classes in typography, well, probably one class last semester. Font selection and styling. Color, very important, influencing perception and emotion. Imagery, signs, icons, and symbols. Sequencing, overall approach to visual storytelling. And finally, visual identity, which is how the organization of the product line expresses itself in a visible language. Okay, so here's the principles of effective user interface design. So you can see how all these bubbles are mixed up. Organize, economize, communicate, provides the user with a clear and consistent conceptual structure, match the presentation to the expectations and capabilities of the user, and do the most with the least amount of cues. Okay, there's another diagram here for clear visual hierarchy. Enables consistency, clearly signifies relationships, and improves navigation. Almost every website that you see now follows the model to the right. The one on the left is very disarrayed, and not a lot of people kind of do that wonky stuff, although it does a little more abstract. But the one on the right is how we do, even when you learn semantic HTML, rows, columns, sections, and things like that, that's how we break it up. The most important elements in action should be easily perceived. Non-critical elements should be de-emphasized. Okay, and you can see how even back in the day, the forms were done like this. The more modern way is the one on the right. I still see some old stuff that's done the way the checkboxes were back in 20 years ago. And another visual design has to balance legibility, readability, typography, symbolism, multiple views and colors or texture in order to communicate successfully. Pattern recognition. I know you did your typography class last semester, and this is an example of some of these fonts that can follow that type of cognitive style. Another pattern recognition here. Yeah, there's 3 different fonts. There are many fonts that are easy to read. Any of them are fine to use, but avoid a font that's so decorative that it starts to interfere with pattern recognition in the brain. So the only time you should use that cursive font is if you do something very significant. Notice how on the internet you don't see a lot of serif fonts, right? Usually it's sans serif, like the block type text, right? And the reason for that is a lot of the printing industry use the serifs for printing. Like you would see the headlines in like sans serif and the body copy in serif. Right? Visual design is not decoration. It should never be based on personal preference. It should never be based on what looks cool. Ask how your design choices work and how they look. Do they support established objectives? Do they clarify the options available? Do they provide context and guidance? Do they establish clear information, action, and priority? There are 4 basic principles used to organize visual information: alignment, proximity, repetition, and contrast. Those are the four main ones. There's other ones, but these are the four main. These principles are interconnected. You will never only apply one principle. So every design has to have alignment, proximity, repetition, and contrast, especially with UI design, of course. Alignment, okay? I mean, the default is left, obviously, but you can use center alignment as well with content. Look at websites, look at apps, buttons, okay? They all use different formats. You gotta pay attention to the little things because it's your job to do that, right? People don't understand the difference. You as a designer have to understand how you implement that stuff. Alignment, here's the grid, right? You guys know how to use the guides and the grids from InDesign to Illustrator to Photoshop to even XD and Figma. They all use guides for organizing principles, alignments. It provides cognitive stability. It creates visual relationships. Every element in the user interface should be aligned with one or more other elements. Align everything. And here's the website without the guides. You can see this is a well-done website with complex information. So when you have a lot of information, the only way to keep it cognitively recognizable is by using alignments properly. And this is a good example of that. This is an interesting one here. Did bad design decide the 2000 presidential election? Double votes for adjunct candidates. Improbable number of votes for Pat Buchanan in liberal Palm Beach County. Multiple instances of improper accounts for candidates. Did you know the design affected the election in the US? Do you guys remember the election in the US in 2000? It was close. It was so close. It was like a couple of hundred votes of swinging the vote this way or that way. And you know what happened? They were doing this. People were confused, checking the wrong box for the wrong person. They made mistakes. But look how stupid that looks. Pardon my language, but look at that. That was the voting ballot. So if you're voting for a president or the candidate, you think it's this person here. This might be this guy. This is that guy. But if you're like 70 years old, you might check the wrong one. So bad UI. It affected the election of the United States. Okay, so it's a clear case in point. So, things from then to now, and it's too late, but that's what happened back then. And I'm sure it did affect some of these votes for sure. Proximity. So elements visually close to each other are perceived as a single group, related by context of use. Unrelated items are visually separated. Group certain elements contextually to form a perceived whole, like blocks of elements, as you know already when you do your HTML. Another example here. A lot of the old school forms, when I first started learning HTML, a lot of the stuff looked like the one on the left. Now most forms look like the one on the right. You see how it shifted, the change, right? In both cases, moving labels a field closer together emphasizes and clarifies the relationship between label and field, whether it's on top or negative. Negative space creates proximity. Another example here. Space between graphics, margins, and gutters, columns, space between lines of types of visuals. Negative space also enables focus. This is not blank space. It's critical element of design. So repetition, again, is used to create hierarchy of visual styles, fonts, colors, and textures, and graphical elements. Reusing elements of those visual styles and elements creates cohesiveness. And here's another UI kit. I believe it's the iOS. Following these rules of design, repetition, proximity, and color, everything cohesively is what made Apple or Windows a successful entity, right? See, there's Apple, Windows, right? Just look at your OS and how nicely aligned everything is, the UI kit. Here's some contrast. Text is easily readable when the stark complementary colors are used. A design where text is the brightest element can reduce eye strain by focusing attention. A lack of contrast between text and background strains the eyes because they don't know which color to focus on. Just because colors are complementary doesn't mean contrast is appropriate. If both colors are too bright, eye strain is again a result. Use this rule for your contrast levels because colors and opposites are important. Here's another example of contrast. Okay, the difference between those two. CNN's website leads with a red banner across the top. Its vibrancy stimulates users that produce heightened emotion. So red is known to produce that heightened emotion. A lot of restaurant chains use warm colors for food, right? Look at Burger King, McDonald's, and all these other Chick-fil-A. They all got an orange, red, yellow, right? Those are the warm colors. They make you hungry, right? You go to a fish house, you go to like a nice fish and chips or whatever, these blue. Blue represents ocean, water, fish, right? Different colors for that. You go to the vegan places, if you're a vegetarian, it's all green, right? Once you see green, you think vegan, vegetarian, vegetables, things like that. So these are the colors that they use to produce, to evoke the emotion. The contrast again, Goods website uses color sparingly. This is a match calmer visual approach. It uses a pronounced lack of color and exaggerated negative space around items of interest. This is calming, decreases the sense of urgency, and invites visitors to take their time. So it creates that calming sensation with people. Okay. Following the eye, you guys know about the F pattern and the Z pattern, different ways of controlling how people um, perceive information. Okay. Here's an example right here. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Most of us look at things that way, right? And then you have, they don't happen by accident. Eye movement across the screen is an ingrained instinctive response. When successful, patterns have two important qualities. The eye moves smooth flow. Okay. When someone says your design is busy, they're really saying that the design doesn't lead them around the screen. Okay. It gives a guided tour of what's available without overwhelming detail. These available choices should support the person's goals and tasks. This is like a study they did with heat signatures, eye tracking records and displays, foveal fixations, the smallest part of our visual field that produces the sharpest vision. Eye tracking doesn't record peripheral vision, which makes up 98% of the visual field. So right now, when I'm looking at you, I can also see the sides right here, right? Peripheral vision is our biggest field of view. What you focus on is very small. It's what you see around you that's kind of what's there. We do pay attention to differences, of course. That's what contrast can make things you really need to see stand out, right? That's why when you put an arrow or something like that, you use colors like red and really bright. Okay, so more contrast here. A lot of popular things now, you black out the background screen. Remember, it's grayed out because the alert message comes out. This way you're focusing on that. What you do, you have 50% black screen on the background. You do that with, whether a script or like a visual thing on a design. Or you can do like a highlight. Uniformity enables contrast and change while keeping those elements from overwhelming from users. So this is the page content changes. This is the modern web design we're still today. You don't really change the menu, the nav bar. You change the content, usually, the images, the graphics, everything on the website there. The layout doesn't. So the layout stays the same, just the content changes. And lastly, uniformity in design elements allow you to apply them consistently and recombine them into new designs as the site or app grows. So as you grow the app or the website, you can add more of these elements in it to expand it. And consistency is what makes a system, right? Consistency in visual design allows users to build an accurate mental model of the way of the site, app, or system works. Things like are buttons and controls placed consistently? Is language consistent in labels and messages? Are font styles, images, graphic elements, and color schemes applied consistently across each screen? If you have the UI kit like this, you should solve all these problems. That's why consistency is important. Do buttons or controls respond to users' actions consistently in terms of visual display, appropriate context, and functionality? Look at iPhone 2013. Look at the iPad 2013. That was a total disaster. Two opposite. People didn't like it at all. And of course, then they kind of made it more similar now. But even the OS looks so much different. This was like 10 years ago, but still, you can relate to it because Apple, obviously, the products are different now. But the interface was so much different from the iPhone to the iPad. Here's another one. Look at the iPhone, look at the iPad. Internal inconsistency. Different parts of screens of the same product reflect different redesign approaches. And this is a college website that totally changes when you click on it. And another one thing, color matters. Okay, so another example here. Color is a critical visual element of most user interfaces. Color has associated meanings that creates emotional responses, as we said earlier, with the red and the importance. To prevent confusion in meaning, color has to be used consistently to get the desired emotional response. Color has to be used appropriately. Okay, and there's another way to organize very, very cluttered information into a cohesive manner. Highlight, okay? You get those alerts on your phone, are they usually red or green or something, right? They really stand out. They're really annoying sometimes. I like to take them out. You know, when you go to your, Instagram or your other social media channels, you got your notifications. This you notice it, right? It's like a red bubble. It's there. Well, the UI was built for that. That's how they did it. Here's another example of how you can utilize color to organize really, you know, um, complex information, right? Like, look at that. Look how beautiful they did a job like this. Tabs, groups, buttons, nicely organized. How else would you lay this out? How else would you organize this for somebody to follow and use? You put rows, columns, tabs, buttons, right? Brilliant. And you can have the menu on the left here. You have all the information over here. So basically, again, evaluating proper color use, things like you got to ask yourself, are these important questions? Are they used sparingly? Do your colors reinforce, interfere with hierarchy and content? Is the color scheme used consistently? Is the color use functional or just decorative? Does functionality depend on color? Would this be just as functional for someone who's colorblind? That too. There's people that sometimes can't differentiate certain colors. So contrast plays a key role in that sense. Serif or sans serif. Some argue that sans serif typefaces are easier to read because they're plain. Others contend that serif fonts are easier to read because the serifs draw the eye toward the letter. Research shows no difference in comprehension, reading speed, or preference between serif and sans serif fonts. As I mentioned earlier, in the printing industry, they seem to lean more towards the serifs, and in the web, the digital stuff that we see, it's more like the sans serifs. And here's another, like how many different fonts do you see here? So use it purposefully. If you're going to mix more than, the rule is 2 different fonts per screen. If you're going to use 3 or 4, make sure you have a good reason. So that's why it says use it sparingly. Here's another example. This is Nike, some tracking app. Look how many different fonts they got. They got like three different fonts. But again, it's using it sparingly or purposefully in this case. If you're going to use more than one typeface, each should be visually distinct from the other. Use 2 different styles only to indicate differences in information you're presenting. Here's another one. And another one. Consistent styling. I know you guys did styles in InDesign, HTML, right? CSS. Same thing here. Keep your styles. I showed you last class in XD, we made components, right? Components is how you keep consistent with styles. Figma has a way to do components as well, or consistent. Okay, here's another way to illustrate styles. So these are the takeaways. I'm going to wrap this up soon, and this is it for the presentations for the UX takeaway here, okay? So this is the last part, is the surface. The four basic principles used to organize visual information. Again, it's alignment, proximity, repetition, and contrast. Good visual design leads the eye through the screen in a smooth flow, giving the user a guided tour of what's available. Consistency's visual design allows users to build an accurate mental model of the way the site, app, or system works. The right colors draws the eye to the most important areas on the screen and influence emotional response. The right color maximizes readability and minimize optical fatigue. If you're going to use more than one typeface, it should be used visually distinct from the other. Use these different styles only to indicate differences in the information you're presenting. Okay? And this is basically an AI UI audit you can do. You can just compare. You already did your website critique. Don't worry about this. But it's another way you can actually see examples of and ask yourself these questions. Does the UI reflect the perspectives and behaviors of the intended users? Does it match the audience, the demographics, that kind of stuff? So it gets really heavy, guys. Okay. If you want to study this stuff, you can really get psychological. But I'm just not going to read this out to you, but you can do your own case studies and interpret what this is. So if we look at websites, for example, I look at commercials on television or thing, and I always look at, you know what, they could have done that better, or they did that good. I pay attention to details that most average people don't care about, right? I'm sure you do the same thing, right? You see effects or something like that, and you wonder, wow, that looks really cool, or that took a lot of work to do, but happened so fast and people don't appreciate it. From this one to that one, okay. So going forward, we're not going to do any more of these presentations. That was just for the first half of the semester and first week of the second semester. We're going to grab a break now. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and start with Figma. So I'm going to do a quick introduction and do the segue from Figma and XD, the differences. And going forward, we're going to use Figma the whole way through, okay? So we're going to do lots of fun stuff. And it'll be a good refresher for me too, because I haven't used it since last semester. So I got to touch it up again. All right, so let's go ahead and stop this video, and I'll see you in the next one. This is part 1 of part 2. I'll see you when you come back.